But so welcome to the Blender live stream today. It's a special Thursday edition. I say special because usually we're on Tuesdays, but today is a big deal. We have a very large course. Whoops, let me mute it. We have a big course from Lampel that was released today, and so we've got him on the stream. I'm going to kind of interview him, try and get inside his head where he was coming from with the course and what he, why he chose the model examples and why they're good for learning this kind of content. What gap in our curriculum this fills. So those kind of questions, because these courses take a lot to create, and I like to talk to the instructors and get as much information out of them to better understand and appreciate the courses. So that's what we're doing today. We're going to start with that interview style, and then Lampel, I believe, has a presentation to overview the core concepts of the course, and then some user questions as well. So that's what's on the docket for today. So first, congrats, Lampel. This is, I think, by far your largest course that you've ever released. Is that correct?
It is. Thanks. Yeah, it was quite big. It's, I think, total of 9 hours of video.
That's nuts.
36 lessons, plus some exercises and all that stuff. So it's quite large. But part of that is it was based on Jonathan Williamson's Mastering Modeling workshop. That was quite a big workshop back in 2012. So I did kind of have a head start, and I used a lot of his reference material and had some of the same ideas. So I didn't have to start from scratch.
Right. Would you say it's like an update to that information, or just inspired by that and bringing it into the modern kind of era?
A little bit of both. I took a lot of the same concepts. Some of the videos are very similar, just with some of this repetitious stuff cut out. So it's a little bit more condensed and dense in terms of information. And then added in some updates, and then just sort of tweaked things as I went along to make it more consistent with the courses that we already have on the site right now. So it just kind of flows with everything else. Excellent,
dude. So let's see. I wanted to say real quick, I mentioned it in the first muted introduction, but if you guys have questions, please post them in the chat, and we will get to them. But we're also going to talk about previously asked user questions at the end. But yeah, don't hesitate to interact with us in the stream. So I got a couple of questions for you. And the first one, at CG Cookie, we aspire to build a curriculum that teaches computer graphics skills from beginner to advanced level. And so with that in mind, what gap in our curriculum do you think this course fills?
I was intending to cover the transition between beginner and intermediate, because I think there was a gap where you're at the skill level where you can follow tutorials and you can make things that people make on the screen, but it's really hard to transition from that to making your own projects and go from there to have the confidence of model whatever that you want to make. And so I'm hoping this kind of bridges that gap from being completely reliant on tutorials to more just looking at them for inspiration, and kind of bringing people up to the intermediate level.
Excellent. Yeah, so specifically you added it to the, was it the introduction? No, what learning flow did you add it to?
I added it to the modeling in Blender flow. So it's the very end of the first section there.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, and that was the reasoning behind it.
Gotcha. Yeah, absolutely. So it seems like we were mentioning that this stream got one of the highest RSVP rates, and that given that, and people have already been watching the video maybe more than usual, that maybe this is a pain point that, I think I was certainly unaware of that area between going from beginner to intermediate, because I feel like we make modeling training frequently, but still, given the response to this course, maybe we were missing that gap.
So I was kind of surprised with how large the response was. I didn't expect it to be quite that big. I thought it was a pain point, but I think we might have hit it on the head, which pretty exciting.
That's awesome. Yeah, absolutely.
A lot of the training, that you'll find either on YouTube or whatever, it's either super basic or super advanced, and a lot of it is also like the quick wins kind of thing, where it's like you get a render setup that makes your stuff look good or whatever, but like the very core foundation of modeling isn't something that's really addressed all that much. So I think it should hit that like very foundational portion.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, speaking of kind of foundational, like what level can someone who's not really been taking like the Blender basics, should that be like an essential thing, like precursor to this course, or could they hit the ground running with this one and just go straight into modeling?
No, it's definitely intended to be used with the flow. And I looked at the mesh modeling fundamentals, and the things that were taught in there, I kind of glossed over in this course intentionally, and I could leave those things out just because we've already talked about them, and then I use some of the tools and whatnot that are used in there, but I don't have to like sit and explain all of those things. So it really builds on the other courses.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. That makes sense. I got a question here in the chat from Matt Curtis. Will you guys be trying to put out some courses for those in the advanced and expert range this year? I remember you guys mentioning that in another stream. Yes, I think so. I mean, as far as big courses, I honestly didn't expect Lampel's course that we're talking about today to be this big. I'm not sure if you expected it to be that big either.
Nope.
But I don't have any advanced, like, large courses planned. I've got the class next month, which is aimed at advanced users. And, I'm releasing a lesson in a chapter in the Shader Forge, which is essentially a small course, and that's certainly an advanced level. So we tackle the advanced stuff. We also get so many requests for beginner things that we try and respect those to try and weigh, like balance the plethora of requests that we get. But on the immediate horizon, the class next month, which I think, Matt, I think I remember your name from the community thread that you're planning on taking that. But cool. Okay, so another question for you, Lampel. You use specific models in this new course, like a female head, dogs, buildings, a soccer ball. Like, can you talk about those and why those made good choices for this particular education?
Sure. I did order them fairly intentionally. I did start out with what was in the Mastering Modeling workshop, but then I altered the order of things a bit. So the very first thing is modeling a coffee cup, and that's just because it's like the essential thing that you have to model. Like, you can't be a good modeler if you never model a coffee cup.
Yeah,
you have to
absolutely.
Do it. And but that's just like the getting into the flow of modeling and having an example that we can look at later. Because the way I wanted to order the course is, first we talk about like how to do something, and then we do it, and then afterwards we talk about why we did it that way. And so Coffee Cup just kind of like starts out that structure. And then the next thing that we make is a soccer ball. And that's a pretty interesting exercise because you have to start out with like the exact right primitive in order for it to like go well. So part of it is talking about how to choose the right primitive, and then the other part of that is selection tools, because it's really easy to model if you use the right selection tools. And so, yeah, we had previously covered in a previous video about all the different selection tools, and a good like half of your workflow is selecting stuff in order to, like, you select something first, then you do an operation. And so there's just soccer ball is a good example of power of selection tools. And then after that, we model a logo, model the CG Cookie logo, and I chose that because that's the part where we're starting to talk about edge loops and edge rings, basic topology, and keeping all your loops nice and clean and all that stuff. And that's a good example with that because it has eyes and a mouth, but nothing too complex. It's still very basic, but it has all of those topology features that kind of introduce those concepts. After that, then we talk about modeling a house. So we just do basic box modeling for a house, and that's a great example to showcase snapping, units, proportions, and just working with the essential tools. Loop cuts, extrusions, and insets will get you like 90% of the way. And so it's just something that you can build using just the basic tools. And then after that, we've got a cartoon head, and that shows edge modeling. So you start with just an edge and go from there. And I chose a head because it's usually one of the harder things to model, or at least it's really intimidating. Like, did you find that when you were starting out, Kent? You're like, if I can model a face.
I mean, I feel like it's still a journey. Like, I haven't perfected it.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's why I chose it, is because it's fairly challenging. So if you follow along and you complete it, even if you haven't memorized how to model a head, you still get that like confidence boost of like, okay, if I can do this, then modeling like a doorknob or like a kitchen sink is not going to be an intimidating challenge. It should be fairly like, oh, okay, I get it.
Right.
So it's just kind of like throwing you off the deep end a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Smart.
Yeah, and then the last project is a rugged revolver, and that was one that actually, if I go to the thing, let me see here. There we go. That way you can actually see all of the different projects. So the rugged revolver is a combination of the two workflows. So with the house we used box modeling, with the head we used edge modeling, and the revolver is just a combination of both of them working together, so you can see the entire workflow of something that's a little bit organic, a little bit hard surface, and it's just a good mix. And then the very last thing is a husky dog, and that's something that's for you to model. It's an exercise, and you're supposed to use all of the things that you've learned in the course to model that. So they all kind of build on each other, one after the other, and they're pretty intentional. So hopefully that works out well.
Yeah, dude, absolutely. One thing that I like and that surprised me is when I was reviewing some of your videos, you do edge modeling of a head, which I honestly have not seen or done in years. And and this is a personality thing, which I like that you and I both contribute to the education, and anybody that does has a slightly different perspective. And so you teach like traditional poly modeling in this course. And even though I rely very heavily on sculpting to retopology, like you can go to ArtStation right now and see amazing models that are pure polygon modeled. So it's not an irrelevant like approach whatsoever. And I like that you bring your own approach to this, your own relevant workflows that are different from mine. So anyway, I thought that was really cool seeing you do the head with edge modeling.
Well, it is kind of funny. Like I actually mentioned in the course itself that usually if you're making a head, you'd want to sculpt it first, just so that you make sure you have all your proportions right, the anatomy's right. That's a better way to do it. Like it just is. But in terms of showing how to use topology tools and showcasing how to go about modeling something, then it's a perfect example. But for like, if you're learning how to just model a head, totally sculpt it first. So
right,
I'm with you.
And there's, I mean, it's definitely the more artistic way, but there's something really good, I think, about learning even in older ways. Like some critics might, can say like maybe that's an outdated technique, but it's not really. Like people, I don't know, it informs your modern workflow to look back at how people, especially did it before sculpting was around. And so it's just a good exercise. I mean, I saw it and I was like, I should go back and model a head without sculpting. I just need to refresh that part of my brain. But yeah, I thought that was cool. I thought you picked really good ones. William mentioned, did Blender Guru inspire the cup model? And I don't know if would you say that you were inspired by Andrew's cup?
Not really. There's like a million cups online, and it's like I don't know. I feel like that's the thing that everybody starts out with, and I was like, we don't have a cup. We need a cup.
Yeah.
So,
okay, right.
it was just sort of a generic, everybody needs to have one.
Well, what's funny is like someone also mentioned that you asking if you were telepathic because this course fits exactly what they're after. But I did a cup in my course in the class last month.
Oh yeah.
Then we didn't talk about that at all. So like it's just an understood thing that you need to model the cup.
Yeah, exactly. I think
right,
we were definitely on the same wavelength though, because some of the exercises and stuff that you had in your class are also in this course. And I don't think we talked about it. At least back when we started it. So, yeah.
Yeah.
We're on the right path.
Oh, man. There's a question in here. Is this just two dudes talking to each other about their new course? Yes. Pretty much that's what we're doing. But like Lampel's going to overview some of the core concepts after. I just wanted to interview him style from someone who did not make the course to hopefully be a voice for people who haven't seen it yet and might be curious about it.
We'll get into the meat of stuff. Don't worry.
Yeah. Let's see here. Is there any other questions? Oh, yeah. I always like to ask this question. Did you learn anything new about workflow or Blender that you did not know before creating this course?
Well, I really enjoyed going through and watching all of the old mastering modeling videos. That was a lot of fun. Just a good refresher. I think the only thing that I didn't know beforehand was how useful the rip fill tool was, and I can show an example of that later, but I didn't realize that was a thing. Have you ever used rip fill?
Oh, I thought you said grid fill.
No,
but you're
rip
saying
fill.
I've not even heard of it.
Exactly, and it's a pretty handy tool, so I was like, oh, that's cool. That's neat.
Nice. Oh, I love that. I love that about usually I end up learning something that I never knew in the process of trying to teach other people stuff. But yeah,
I can show it later, but if anybody's watching at home, it's Alt-V.
Right.
It is the hotkey.
Alt. Man, I've never even heard of it. Yeah, I'm curious to see that myself. A quick question from Mal Holmesy. What was your first model ever, Lampel?
My first model ever? I think my first model ever was probably a snowman. I started around wintertime.
Inspired, by the seasons. That's pretty. I think my first one was a weapon of some kind, but it was just cramming a bunch of cylinders together. That was my first. I didn't jump into vertices or anything. That was my first one.
Yeah.
A program called Milkshape. But
Nice.
Cool. All right. Well, that's kind of all the questions that I had for you to explain about the creation process and where your mind was at when you decided to create the course and how you went about it. So that's cool. Yeah. I hand it over to you.
Sweet. So let's talk about modeling.
Let's do it. What does that do? Byman Alt V. It's rip fill. Apparently, it's a tool that I've never really used, but it was the thing that Lampel learned, the new thing he learned when creating this course.
Yeah, it's one of those hidden gems.
Hidden gems.
So yeah, in this stream we're mostly going to be talking about topology, and if you look it up on Wikipedia, there's no definition. There's like a really math particular definition. There's not something that you can really grab onto and find that's useful. So my definition of topology, I don't know, Kent, if you have a different one, but it's just how the components of a mesh combine to form its shape. Because we know by now, if you're watching the stream, that meshes are made up of vertices, edges, and faces. But you can use a lot of different combinations of those to make the exact same shape. So in the example that I have on the screen is some circles, and they're all exactly the same, except they're just made differently. And so when we talk about good topology, it's just finding out which solution is best for making the shape that you're going after. So that's what my definition of good topology is. It's when the components efficiently define the intended shape and can be easily manipulated. So it's sort of a dense definition, but there's no rules in the definition of good topology. There are things that are helpful for helping you get there, but there's no hard and fast, you have to use only these components or whatever in order for it to be good topology. So it's all relative, but in the sense that it gets you to this end of being clearly defining what you're trying to make, and that it's only the intended shape, and that it's efficient to run. So efficiently, when I talk about like defining only the intended shape and can run smoothly on target hardware. So efficiently might mean that if you're running it on a small Nintendo Switch, you're going to have different topology than if you're working for a blockbuster movie and you can use lots of subdivision or what have you. So in terms of defining the intended shape, here's an example of an area that's not defining clearly what you're trying to do. So I just took a plane, subdivided it, and brought a level up. And you can see that one of the quads there is broken, and the intended shape is a lump in the surface, or a raised version of it, but the topology isn't matching what the shape is that we're going for. So if we alter it a bit and we clearly define that corner, then now we have something that is clearly defined. So it's a super simple example, but hopefully it illustrates what I'm talking about when I'm meaning like clearly defined and efficient for running on your different hardware. Definitely depends on what you're trying to do. So the example on the left would be a great topology if you're making a game, but it would be very poor topology if you're subdividing it and using it for an animation. Similarly, on the right is subdivided and would be great for an animation, but it would be really poor topology for putting in a game. So it all depends on what it is that you're trying to do and whether or not the topology matches those goals. So far so good? Does that all make sense?
Oh yeah, sorry, I was looking at that was good description of topology in general. If I were to try and break it down into simple terms, I remember when I first started for years in modeling, like it was all utilitarian, like the mesh only existed, vertices and edges only existed to create the shape however you got there. Mm-hmm. And then topology, that concept was like you can be intentional in how you go about it. Like there's intention to put into the actual wireframe rather than just the final shape. And so that's kind of what it meant to me. And beyond like the efficiency side of it, which is very important, and you talked a lot about that, when you go, it's not so much for more organic stuff. Once you start going there, deformation and how like the topology on a character around the shoulder or around the mouth, things that deform, the topology matters in those instances. Some topology can make it deform much worse than if it was shaped a different way or constructed in a different way. So it basically just intention into the wireframe beyond just to create the shape.
Yeah, and the whole goal of it is to make your life easier.
Yes.
It's not supposed to be just rules for the sake of whatever, but it's to make your life easier, to make everything look better. And, yeah.
Let's see, another question. So we had a couple questions here. Let's try and run through those real quick.
Sure.
Can these live streams be viewed later when they aren't live? Yes. If you go to the events page on the left, and then you'll see the list of streams upcoming. There's a past button, a past events button, and those are all our previous streams, and you can watch those. Usually within 48 hours of broadcast, we'll be able to put those up. And then, we had a question from, do you think from Thomas Brule, do you think a lot of talent is required to become really good with modeling?
I don't think so. Not a lot of, my idea of talent is, innate talent. But modeling it's all problem solving. And it's all about, I don't know, if you have good topology, it just makes your life easier. So it's almost like it takes less talent if you figure out how to model things well. I think one of the so I'm trying to find my notes here. I can't find it. Oh, there it was. So one of the questions I don't think we talked about was like, are there any like misconceptions that I think people might have?
Oh, I did. I skipped right over that one. Yeah.
Oh, that's fine. But that question reminded me of that. And that's it. If a model doesn't turn out well, then I guess I'm a bad artist. And I think that has to be like one of the larger misconceptions or things that like I thought, like if my model didn't turn out well, I'd be like, oh man, like I suck. But it's usually just due to the process of how you got there. And if you have the right process, it's easy to end up with a better result. And so it's mostly due to, an eye for detail and proportions, and also just going about things the right way. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, I would say it does. We've actually, it's funny, we have an article that's in the queue, about to be published, a blog article from a senior artist at Epic Games, and he's connected with us, and it's a whole article about how talent is a myth. And so I highly encourage you to look for that in the coming weeks. It's a really, really inspiring look at talent that's very inclusive. It's basically hard work is what it comes down to. Talent is a myth because hard work is how you get anywhere, kind of a deal. So, look for that one.
And that is to say that it's going to take a lot of practice. Like that, it's going to take a while. As with kind of but that's, anything worthwhile.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I want this kind of is a random thought, but I kind of wonder, like, anytime I explain what I do to a stranger or someone I met for the first time, I tell them, like, it starts high level, like I do kind of Pixar-y stuff, and then inevitably it's like, oh, so you work at Pixar? No, but I do 3D modeling. Oh, so you can build like full characters and animate them. I'm like, no, I do 3D modeling only. That's where it ends up digressing to. And they start to glaze over, and I think it's that they think because we do it on the computer, someone types in like Buzz Lightyear go, and it happens. I don't know if that's a misconception, but like it's an incredible amount of work to do 3D graphics, and I don't know. Hope eventually people learn that it's not easy. But anyway, random thought.
Yeah, so don't be hard on yourself if it's taking a while. Yes.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Let me scan real quick, see if we... John Cockrell, you're saying, is this a good place for me to start since I have watched the basic tutorial? Yes, if you're interested in 3D modeling, first of all, and you have taken the Blender basics, or you're coming into CG Cookie knowing the essentials of 3D, or especially Blender, then yes, this course should be perfect for you, perfect place for you to get started.
Yeah, and check out the modeling in Blender flow, because it's all fairly well ordered there. So if you've taken the basics, then jump into that flow and then start at the beginning there, because there's also the intro to retopology and things like that, which will help you get on your feet and be more prepared for the course. Yeah, was that all the questions we have so far?
Believe it is. I'll keep a note of any new ones. I'll let you can go on.
Okay, yeah, I'll just keep going.
Okay.
So after that, we're talking about topology and defining the intended shape. That was in my definition of good topology. And by that I mean that edges should form a continuous loop or continuous path along surface features. So we're talking about edge loops and edge rings, and we mostly talk about edge loops, but edge rings are also important. So edge loops are just sets of continuous edges strung one after the other, and edge rings are sets of parallel edges. So here you can see that over on the left, we have an edge loop, and in the center we have an edge ring, and in the middle we have a face ring, which is just two parallel edge loops and then the edge rings in the middle of them. And then what you want to do is use these to define and surround your major features. That's going to help you really get that good definition. So in this example, we have like the cookie and coffee cup, and I've colored different face loops differently. So you can see that we're using those edge loops to surround all of our features, and that's what's helping us to get the good shape. And so the way that you do that is by controlling your edge flow. In order for you to surround a shape or to manipulate where your edge loop is going, you have to be able to control it well. And the way that you do that is with poles and all quad junctions. So first we'll talk about poles a little bit. But poles are just vertices with 3, 5, or more edges connecting to it. And these are pretty important because they do a couple things. So first, they change the direction of the edge flow. So anywhere that you have a pole in your mesh, if you have an edge loop that's coming out towards it, it hits the pole and it gets bounced off in a different direction. So anywhere where your edge loop takes a turn or just switches direction, you have to have a pole there. And that's sort of its main purpose, is allowing you to direct your edge loops in different directions. But at the same time, they're also get pinched when smoothed. So that's why sometimes you might hear about poles in the negative sense of like you have too many poles or you might not want to pull there. And that's because they get pinched when either subdivided or sometimes when you set your shading to smooth. Also, this is true for triangles and n-gons. But here's an example where poles will mess up your shading a little bit. So the cookies that have the wires on them are unsubdivided, and then the cookies without the wires are subdivided. But you can see that when subdivided, the poles that are at the very edges get pinched towards the center. So on the right, we have edge loops that sort of brace between the defining part of the feature and then the inside pole, whereas on the left, we just have the pole right up against that defining feature, and then when it gets subdivided, it gets pinched in that direction and kind of messes things up a little bit. And you can see that triangles also pinch, and also n-gons are pretty much just, n-gons are kind of, you can think of triangles like a triangle fan. An n-gon always like pinches everything towards the center of the n-gon, so you're going to end up with some weird geometry if you have that and then try to smooth it and subdivide it. So this is mostly for subdivision surface modeling. We talk about these things in the context of, if you have a subdivision surface modifier attached. But also notice how on the unsubdivided models up here, you have, so the one on the very far left and then the one on the middle right are not subdivided, but the shading is actually different. So they're the same model with slightly different topology, but the actual reflections are different, not just in the eyes, but going around, and the reflections themselves are being stretched in different areas. So even when we're talking about low poly modeling and game modeling, it's still important to keep in mind because the topology is going to reflect how things are shading or influence how things are shading. So anything that's smooth shaded or subdivided, we have to pay attention to these things. So triangles and n-gons stop edge loops. So a set of connected edges would be the edge loop, and then it can only know where to go when it has 4 connecting edges. If it has 3 or more, then it can't decide which direction it should go, and so it just stops. And so that's just something to be aware of. It's not necessarily a good or bad thing. Sometimes it's helpful, sometimes it's not. It's just a feature of them that's good to be aware of. So, a lot of things, when we talk about good topology, something that's always brought up is using all quads. And this is something that's just helpful to force you to think about the edge flow, because you're always going to have your loops going. They're not going to be stopped at your triangles and your n-gons, and they're going to continue through your model, and you can make sure that they're directed in the right ways. So using all quads helps you to really think about your edge flow and be intentional about placing them around your surface features. And yeah, just helps smooth things out, helps things to go well. It looks nice and clean. It's easy to manipulate, but there's no hard and fast rule that you only need to use quads. But if you're starting out, I would suggest doing that just to begin with. And that way it'll force you to think in the right ways, and then later, as you get more advanced, then you can use triangles and n-gons intentionally in the right ways. So yeah, any questions about triangles and quads and all that stuff before we talk about junctions?
Sorry, I was muted. Sorry, okay. I was muted. Yeah, we've gotten a couple of people, William and, let's see, who's the other one down here? Malholmesy, talking about subsurface. Now, Malholmesy's saying even with good topology, using subsurface ruins everything. You have to find a workaround to keep edges, and that's bugging him. And then William also said subdivision is what's been giving him trouble.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing, because adding a subdivision shouldn't change, it doesn't change the nature of your mesh. So whatever problems that were there when you have a subsurf are still there without it. It's still problematic. It's intensifying whatever the problem is. It's making it more obvious than it was before. So if we go back to these different cookies, you can see that I'm guessing that when you add your subdivision surface, and if that's what's intensifying the problem, is that you're getting some of those pinched areas or whatnot. And so usually that's what happens when you have poles directly on your surface features and you don't have any edge loops that are supporting it. So in the course we talk about supporting edge loops and boundary loops and the different kinds of edge loops that you can use to make sure that doesn't happen. By placing your loops such that they directly line up with the anatomy of whatever you're trying to make, then you shouldn't have that problem. Adding a subdivision surface modifier will, in that case, it will just add to the correct anatomy and make it look more correct, instead of making it look more incorrect. Does that work? That's kind of a long answer for...
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you're absolutely right. Poles especially are a frustrating part of subdivision surface modeling. What I also thought about was, I don't know, if it's too low poly, if you watch I can imagine it being a situation where you go to YouTube and you find a modeling tutorial, but it's for low poly meshes. And so you follow that tutorial, you build a really low poly model, and then you go to smooth it because you want it to be for animation and for rendering, and then it just goes horribly wrong. I can imagine that situation happening, and basically you do have to get used to the idea of reinforcing your shapes when you come into subdivision surface.
There is the idea that you will need multiple edges close together in order to get a clean edge. And in the cookie example on the top right, we're using an edge that goes all the way around. That's sort of a buffer edge between what's ever on the inside and what's ever on the outside. We just have that clean separation between the two, and that way we get that clean edge. And also when you're subdividing things that are close together will end up looking much sharper, but usually that's not the problem. Usually it's just poor definition of whatever the anatomy is.
Yeah, sorry, I'm typing the
Sure.
our member saying it's too far above his head to have a decent question. So I was just going to ask, like, is he total beginner?
Oh yeah, and that's totally fine. Hopefully by the time that you get through all of the other courses, you'll be well prepared.
Yeah.
And if you have a different question later, you can always ask in the community for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Let's see. So there was a question, Lampel, in the community forum. Maybe you answered it there, but I missed it, about the William Miller having trouble making protrusions and extensions with his fighter jet. Did you answer him there, or were you going to do that?
No, I was going to answer that one at the end because it was fairly specific.
Oh, at the end. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Nice.
Yeah,
Let's see. I'm not seeing any more questions. Or wait a minute, we do have one from David. Possibly a course solely directed at proper pole placement. And the course challenges the citizens to place pole in proper strategic locations, question mark. Let's see, I don't quite understand that. It sounds like he's asking for like a course strictly focused on poles. Which, I don't know, do you feel like there's enough?
I feel like that would be helpful in a way. Like, this course definitely covers that, and you'll see examples of that as we go through the different modeling examples. But it's just place it wherever you need loops to change directions.
Right.
There's not a whole lot else to it. It's easy to sometimes accidentally place them in an area where you don't want them, and so, if it's causing problems, then you've got to move it. But there's not, like, one correct solution where it's like, oh, there needs to be a pole here, or, there can't be one there, or whatever. It's fairly flexible. Anywhere where your features diverge. So, like, in a face, you have features like you have a loop going around the mouth, because that's a feature. Keep hitting my microphone. And then you have a loop going up your jaw, because that's also a feature. But at some point, these two are going to come together and find that little point, and that's where your pole is going to be, is where those features kind of diverge.
I wanted to ask you, do you do much retopology as well as traditional poly modeling for organic shapes?
Occasionally, not
occasionally.
More than regular modeling. I don't know.
Okay. I remember that when I used to box model organic shapes like characters, I found it almost too difficult to be mindful of the topology and the shape at the same time. So I really struggle with poles. Mm-hmm. And then when I got to the sculpting retopology side, poles became much less of a problem with me drawing every polygon one by one. And I didn't know if you would agree with that in your experience.
I definitely would. That's why I definitely like the sculpting retopology route for making lots of these things, because when you're box modeling, it's easy to kind of get messy and things get more and more complex as you add more and more loops. Whereas with sculpting retopology, you start out by defining all of your major forms, and then you kind of fill in the gaps. So instead of things getting more and more complex as you go, it gets easier and easier until by the end you're just filling in a couple patches. And so it's kind of two different ways of working, but
right, yeah.
Characters and organic shapes, I definitely like sculpting.
Mm-hmm.
And then edge modeling.
Right. Let's see. A quick question. Are these streams mobile responsive? Meaning, can I easily watch them from a mobile device? Have you ever tried that?
You can. They're not. The web pages themselves at the moment are not very mobile friendly, but they're getting there. That's on the to-do list for sure.
Okay.
But that's just more of a site question. The video itself will play.
Right. It is a YouTube in like video ultimately. So most phones can play those. I imagine if you went to the site and then like maximized it or whatever.
Yeah, totally.
But it should work. A question a while back from David, sort of related. I really would like to see an intensive workflow on how to use Retopoflow, the add-on. From I don't know anything about this add-on to I'm fluent in it. In a very linear syllabus-like setup. So I'm glad to hear that you're interested in that. Frankly, I felt a little conflicted about that since it's the add-on that like CG Cookie builds and Jonathan Williamson actively develops. I guess I would feel like it's like, hey, check out our new course that requires you to buy our tool in a way. But I don't know. We'll have to pitch that to Jonathan Williamson. He'd be the most apt person to do that for sure. But yeah, maybe in the future we'll be able to.
I mean, we do have an intro to Retopoflow course. I don't know, you might have already seen that. But it is something that we have on the site. And I'm sure when 2.0 comes out eventually, then there will probably be an update, but I don't want to bind anyone with those words.
Right. Right. Excellent. Well, that's all the questions I'm aware of right now. Oh, actually, no. Okay, from John Cockrell. I have no experience with 3D anything, but I do Adobe Illustrator and Photoshop. For those, I use a Cintiq Companion. Is that still good to use for modeling, or would a mouse be better? It's a good question. Did you use your mouse strictly for this course, or did you use your pen, Lampel?
I did use my mouse. I actually switched to a trackball mouse over after Black Friday. It was on sale. So I thought I'd give it a try. And it's actually pretty good. Like, I don't have to move my wrist around a bunch. So it's really
looking
comfortable.
Over that carpal tunnel.
But it took a little bit of getting used to. It's kind of weird to use just your thumb, but it works great for modeling. I couldn't get used to modeling with a pen. I think it's mostly because I kept accidentally selecting things. But there's definitely a setting that you can turn off that makes it easier. I think it's something tweak where if you hold down a selection and you move it, it'll start grabbing something. And I kept doing that with my pen, and it was super obnoxious. But you can turn that off. But I just still haven't gotten used to it.
I'm kind of with you. For box modeling, I typically stick with a mouse, but for sculpting, without a doubt, I switch to a pen.
Yeah.
There was a time, I think, when I first got a pen and tablet that I tried to do everything on my computer with a pen, from internet browsing, including all modeling and stuff. And that was an interesting few months, but.
There's always that transition where I feel like everybody has to try. It's like, oh, I can do everything with this. And then you get multiple displays and it's really stretched across this tiny portion of your tablet. And you're like, this is not what I was.
Yeah. Your little movement shoots the mouse across the screen. Yeah, really hard to do precise things for sure. Another question. From what I can see, you can still make models of characters in Mesh. Let me read that again. From John. From what I see, you can still make models of characters in Mesh. I think he means you can still poly model a character.
Oh yeah, totally.
Right. Yeah, absolutely you can. I mean, that used to be the only way it was possible. I think it's amazing that the back in the early 90s, the dinosaurs in Jurassic Park were NURBS modeled.
That's wild.
Yeah, just imagine that. And they looked incredible. They still hold up. Yeah, so you can absolutely model this stuff with traditional polygon modeling. It'll just be maybe a little harder, but you can do it. Man, questions are coming in. I'm they're missing them. David's asking, I did the intro, but who else? The intro to Retopoflow, I believe. But who else other than CG Cookie is going to be more apt to do it? Yeah, that's true. I haven't seen that course in a while, and also I think the tool has progressed a lot since that course was recorded. So I might have to nudge Jonathan Williamson to do a course when the new version comes out, the big update. Maybe he'll be apt to do that course. I love the humor of our community, by the way. Y'all probably see me giggling from time to time. Awesome. Well, cool, man. Got about 10 minutes left. Did you want to address that fighter jet question to kind of...
Oh, yeah, sure.
Things?
And I think I had one last couple slides.
Oh, gotcha. Cool.
So the last sort of piece of the puzzle was all quad junctions. So when we're using all quads, junctions are a way to localize your detail. So I think it's at the end. Yeah, that's the end. But all quad junctions essentially allow you to go from areas of low detail to areas of high detail. And that way you can use your, amount of geometry, or like how much detail you have in your mesh, in proportion to how much detail you need. So like a face, you need quite a bit of detail to get the eyes, the nose, the mouth, and all that stuff. But you don't need that high density of mesh on like the back of the head. And so junctions are the way that you localize that and keep them in those areas. So we can look at a few different models here. Let me switch my stream setup. Alright, so here we have the different junctions, and so over here on the left we have a 1 to 3 junction, so you're just getting one vertex as the input and you get 3 as the output, but it's still using all quads, and you can see that all of our poles are now like turning points for a mesh. And then there's just a couple different ways that we go over in the course of how to localize that detail. And well, in here I can just go over some of the different models that we make. So we make the coffee cup, we make the logo. I use this car as an example, so we don't model a car. However, I use it as a topology example, and this is how we talk about edge loops and how to wrap them around our different surface features. And so it's also part of the files as well, so you can download this and just play around with it and look at some of these different areas and notice how the topology is formed to make these different shapes in a clean way. So hopefully that's helpful. And we also have that for a head, where you can see that all of these different areas where the topology takes a turn, we have poles. So where it turns along the jaw, got a pole there, and we cover all of this stuff in the course. So hopefully you guys find that helpful. And if there are any questions that I can answer about either what I've talked about in the stream or anything that you've seen in the course so far, definitely let me know. In terms of the fighter jet, so I downloaded the picture. Let me see. Let me get that really quick. In the meantime, let me know if there are any questions.
Yeah, absolutely. There actually is one that is from Kevin. Is it bad if I say my best sculpt ever was made with the mouse? I have a tablet, but I'm absolutely horrible with it, especially when it comes to drawing. No, I wouldn't say that's bad. I mean, frankly, if I could do an entire sculpture with just a mouse, I'd be tweeting about it. I'd be proud of that. It's usually I would say my experience, more difficult with a mouse because mainly you're missing, I drew growing up, so a lot of people who get into sculpting are more artistic and have a little bit more of that side to them, and so it's very natural to pick up a pen and make drawing motions to create sculpture. A lot of clay sculpting tools are like pin shaped. So in that way, it's natural. But I mean, if you can do it with a mouse, someone mentioned it. What works for you, really? We consider ourselves successful teachers, even as Lampel said earlier, to give you a push out the door, show you what's possible, share our workflow, and then you take that, digest it, and then go on your own, or you follow us, or figure out your own way. That means you understand the core concepts of what we're teaching, and you're able to adapt to work, make what works best for you. So that's a big part of it. And if the mouse works best for you in sculpting, go for it.
Yeah, I would encourage you to, if you're just uncomfortable with the tablet and it still seems a bit awkward, just practice, because I think over time that will be the better option. I'm pretty confident in saying that, but at the same time, you can do crazy things in Microsoft Paint as well, and there's lots of ways to go around it. Udit, I think, is his name. He made the girl picture. It's just called Girl.
Oh yeah,
with the blonde
the recent
girl with like the robot arms, and it's like super good.
Oh my gosh!
And
yeah,
he sculpted that with a mouse, so it's like it's possible because he just doesn't have a tablet. And so
just because he doesn't have one.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh! I'm glad you brought that up. That's an amazing example of what can be done without a tablet.
Yeah, so you can clearly do amazing things with just a mouse, but I think over time it's just more natural. It helps you get it helps you rough things in a lot faster, I think is the big point.
Yeah. Also, with a pen, one of the biggest benefits for me is the pressure sensitivity. So when I push on, if I use your brushes and you've got that sensitivity on, pushing harder has a greater effect, and you can be light, and so you can just have more of that artistic feel as you're creating, rather than very linear, like all strength or no strength kind of things. So you're not going to be able to reproduce that with a mouse. That's just a technical limitation of a mouse versus a pen and tablet. But if the mouse works for you, go for it. There's nothing wrong with that. A question for you, Jonathan, from David. Do you have a simple screenshot pic of those of those Vertex junction examples, object planes that you just showed?
Do I have a picture?
I think he's asking you for a picture of those, the meshes with the Vertex junctions.
Oh, I mean, you can go through and if you want to like screenshot it, but it's also like a full lesson in the course, so you can go through and look at those. But yeah, they're
sweet.
There they are. Just these three. Those were different examples.
Excellent.
Yeah. So for the fighter jet, what I was looking at here, you said that you had trouble with extrusions, and I'm not entirely sure what to talk about here, because you have your faces and you've extruded them, and that seems to be working just fine. I think most of the trouble comes in with just having too much geometry right out of the gate. Like, so far you're not very far into the model, but there's still quite a lot of geometry going in this direction. I don't think we need all of that, and going up here. So one of the things that you'll get, switch to my eraser, just by watching the course, is blocking out things very simply first. I think the gun exercise is going to help you a lot with this, because you create the most simple shape possible first and then go and refine it. Whereas now we have a bit too much geometry and we have a bit too much detail too soon. That's going to create some of this awkward geometry right over here, over on the left, where we just need a single face extruded. So even if you start with less vertices in your circle, so I think this is just the default with 32, maybe there's more, but just try starting with 16 vertices in your circle, or starting with fewer that way. But in terms of like making protrusions, you have it done the right way in terms of just taking a face and extruding it. So I'm not sure what else to comment on there. Kent, do you have anything?
I can remember, when I read that question, I can remember being confused about extrusions, like, for example, at the tail over there, at the tail portion of that fuselage, I guess, you've got that grid pattern of topology around the cylinder, but then the wing that you want to extrude doesn't fit exactly in that grid pattern. And so then it's like, well, what do I do exactly? I remember being confused about that at the beginning of like box modeling. Basically, when you kind of like a square peg in a round hole, like a lot of times extrusion can feel like that to a degree.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't remember what like got me out of it, other than like you said, you figured it out. You know, if that was complex for you to do, you figured it out, and it will be less complex the next time you go about it. So I just think like more time with it, getting used to modeling, like, is going to make that better. But a lot of times modeling is sort of like the problem solving of a round peg in a square hole, or vice versa.
Yeah, that's for sure. But you have your loops sort of lined up with what you're trying to extrude, so I mean, for the most part, I think you got it. I don't think it's hard to see this area here, but over on the right, I think that could probably be a little bit simpler. I don't know if that's inset or not. It's hard to tell, because if that's an inset, that's probably unnecessary. You could just extrude it straight without insetting it first, and then move some of these other edges to like make that shape. But yeah, other than that, like, I think you're definitely not, like you said, you were kind of giving up on it, and I don't think it's far gone at all.
Yeah, no, definitely not. Yeah.
Also, by the way, I love that you took the time and like wrote down your workflow and like your steps and everything over here in the text editor. Like, that's a really cool idea. I love it.
Oh, I didn't even notice that.
Yeah, it's like asking questions like what kind of engines we'll have, and like thinking about these things ahead of time. That's awesome. That's perfect. That's exactly the kind of things that you should be thinking about. So that's good.
Excellent. Cool, dude. Well, it's exactly the top of the hour. If you had anything more, I don't see any new questions, so we could probably call that a stream, unless you have anything else.
Okay, no, I didn't have anything else. That was all I got.
Good deal, man. Well, thanks for taking the time to talk about this. I hope some of you guys had your questions answered, and I hope you guys will all check out that course. It's massive, so I guess you could binge watch it, but
don't binge watch it. No.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, you could.
Don't do that. It was probably a lot to digest, so maybe it's best not to do that.
It's very dense. Mm-hmm. It's really dense. So yeah, it'll take a while to digest. Like, I looked at it and compared it to like my old college courses and stuff like that, and it's about a quarter's worth of information. So it's at least enough to digest over like a few months.
Wow. Yeah, I think that's really smart.
Yeah, so don't feel like you have to rush through it. You can take your time and slow it, and it's meant to be rewatched as well. So some of the videos, like proportional editing, if you forget that, there's a video that's like 4 minutes, and you can go back and watch that. You don't have to like dig through a whole, long video to find that one specific spot. It's all meant to be rewatched later. So
excellent. That's a good tactic.
Yeah, don't feel like you have to sprint.
Excellent. Awesome, guys. Well, you have a good rest of your Thursday, and thank you again, Lampel. We'll see you next week.
Awesome. Talk to you later.
All right. See you.